Yo guys, it's me Matrix here, coach of the Welsh Wailords, bringing you the final week 10 of the UGA Season 2 Draft League. This week I am joined by both Masenko
Hello.
and Bryan.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So, although this is the final scheduled week, there is another week for makeup matches called Week 11. We'll get to that at the end of towards the end of this the end of the rankings. But it's been a while since we've all been on the stream together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
It's been a while since the three amigops have been here.
Yeah. Been a little busy, but now I'm finally here for the final week, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's okay. We stand.
So we've unfortunately we lost last week's recording. My fault. I forgot to record the audio of both Jedi and Bryan, so it's and because of time restrictions, and I just decided to brush it under the carpet. Never mind, we'll do that. Never happened, which is unfortunate because Jedi was ancient Jedi of the Johto Division was our guest last week, and he was a really great guest, and so again,
he was on his game.
Yeah, really insightful about his game that he played, and had a lot of opinions that he shared. And I've just got to apologise to Jedi for the fact that I single-handedly ruined that. So
yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first time, Matrix. Wouldn't be the first time.
Hopefully that is now the last time.
If you at least once, then do you even have a podcast? If you haven't messed it up once.
I do.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's I'm sure it's all, I'm sure there's no hard feelings.
Water on the bridge at this point.
Yeah, that's all good. So let's get into what's going on with the league.
Yeah, and this week we're doing things a little different. We'll start off with the same breakdown of the last week's games, move on to the power rankings and predictions, and then we'll finish off with a little bit of a special segment of our playoff predictions as to who of the final teams will make it into the top 6. Because if it's still tight, out of the 12 teams that are still in the league, there are actually 9 teams still up for still competing for those top 6 spots. Only 3 of the teams so far are confirmed to be in the playoffs. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So we'll start off the week. We'll only brush along these games a little bit, not as fully in depth as past weeks. But we'll start off with the Merseyside Marowaks versus the Cardiff Kamalas. And I've only just watched this match like a few minutes ago. And I think this.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Sorry, go.
Sorry. Go. Oh yeah, no. I was just gonna say I think this game was definitely a very close one. For just like the teams going up against each other, based on what I saw in terms of the compositions that they both brought, it seemed like it was kind of an interesting win for the Cardiff Kamalas with the Venusaur versus Marowak Alola matchup, right? You would expect Marowak Alola to win that most of the time. But as we saw, the positioning from the Cardiff Kamalas, as opposed to the Merseyside Marowaks, was a little bit better, being able to position Venusaur in such a way that even under Trick Room, with the Togepi in Game 3, it's able to redirect for it, and you can get off those Earth Powers and those Max Quakes. It's going to do a lot of damage to the Marowak, ultimately.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Able to boost its own special attack with Max Ooze in Game 3 as well.
Yeah,
even doing more damage from even not even a Max Quake, from just the Earth Power.
And this is the thing. What I was going to say is that it really felt like a game of positioning. The Marowaks were trying to dance around this Venusaur from the Cardiff Kamala side, trying to get the Marowak in after setting the Trick Room without being hammered by the Venusaur the turn it switches in, and just making sure that the Marowak can move first against the Venusaur. We saw in Game 2 that we'll We can start with game one actually. So game one, although I feel like the Marowaks were almost a turn behind the entire time, where they should have switched out their, was it the Porygon for the Marowak before the Venusaur came onto the field. I feel like he could have switched out the Porygon for the Marowak and just spored the Dragapult
Right.
on that one turn. And sorry.
All three games, you saw this sort of like, I guess, both hesitancy and sort of like feeling stuck in an inability to switch into the Marowak safely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like clearly he was not feeling as confident to switch in Marowak. Like you'd set up the trick room and then immediately afterwards it was just a long sort of like 2 to 3 turns of not having that Marowak pivoted into. You'd have Rubombi sitting on the field for too long. You'd have Porygon sitting on the field for too long, Amoonguss, etc. So that's definitely, I think, where his sort of like Achilles heel was this match. Is like, yes, you can set up Trick Room. You've done that part. You've done super well, but now you got to get your carry in position. And Cardiff Kamalas was just faster at getting that Venusaur out.
Yeah.
I also think that when he did set Trick Room, he didn't utilize it very well because his main way of setting up Trick Room was like Rage Powdering with Amoonguss and then Trick Rooming with Porygon. But in that instance, it's 2 supports. Generally, you would want when you set the Trick Room for the next turn, you'd want a more offensive pairing with a more offensive Pokemon pairing with the Trick Room setter. In this instance, with the 2 supports, he was always just like protecting on the Amoonguss instead of going in for an attack or sporing something else on the field. So I felt even though he's at the Trick Room, he didn't use Trick Room well enough. I don't think.
I think it's not so much like it's quite common to use a more passive lead for a typically passive lead for your Trick Room setter, but it's not really. It's offensively passive, but it's still disruptively aggressive. Like you get an Amoonguss into Trick Room, and I think that's kind of like it was disappointing that although we saw straight away first turn that the Cinderace is safety goggles because of it ignored the Raid Powder. That Porygon living on 2 HP was super clutch and able to set that Trick Room. But then it was a case of he needed to switch out this Porygon to get the Marowak. And the fact that we were just seeing protects from an Amoonguss inside of Trick Room was a little bit waste, I think. Like, yeah, it was a little bit unfortunate to see that he was protecting because you can't redirect from the Cinderace anyway, so you're not really needed to preserve for that Cinderace redirection for your other mons. And it was a free Spore on that first turn. Yeah, you run the risk of him switching out that Venusaur, but then that's why you would switch in the Marowak that same turn, because then you're getting that Marowak in under Trick Room before the Venusaur can come out, and it's very unlikely he's going to be going for a Sucker Punch or a Max Darkness into the Porygon slot when it's on 2 HP.
Right.
So for the interest of time, I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway I think we all had when rewatching this just now, is that like the positioning here was really the sort of like most important element of this game in determining. And props to Cardiff Kamala for like positioning really well with that Venusaur, like you know, finding really good opportunities for it to just get that damage off when it needed to. You know, like you saw how like valuable chip damage is against Maxmons, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Marowak being able to get hit by a big Max Quake, taking out a little over half its health, then getting a little bit chunked more by that that Vine Lash. You know, that just that kind of stuff wins you the game. And if you're taking turns max guarding with Marowak, not Merseyside Marowak, I guess it is the Merseyside Marowak, but like, yeah, max guarding with Marowak in one of those games, I didn't really agree with.
Yeah, especially when
I
you're
think
under
we
the
know-
trick room.
Yeah. He might have been out of Trick Room at that point, but it's just like at a certain point, you just kind of have to go pedal to the metal and like, realize that in order to win, you can't play passive anymore. You
Yeah.
need to hope that the opponent makes the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Um,
What was final few thoughts of that is that I thought game one was a little bit of a sticky start for the Marowaks, but then was really unlucky with that flinch into the Amoonguss, because I feel like if that Amoonguss didn't get flinched from the rock side, he probably could have taken it, because of obviously Geiger Drain into the Kabutops fully restores the health, then you just re-Geiger Drain the Kabutops and then to get rid of it, because it'd be Sash. And then you just Geiger Drain the Dragapult the following turn, and between Dragapult and Kabutops, they weren't going to be able to do enough damage to this Amoonguss. So that flinch was crucial for the Cardiff Kamalas getting that game one win, especially when the Marowaks played such a good game too. They could have easily have taken this 2-0 if not for that first game flinch, because they adapted well in their lead for the second game. And I feel like going into the third game, bringing maybe the Battle Scooter wasn't the best lead, and maybe the could have gone for the other pairing, but that's why Venusaur came out in game 3 ready for the Rabombi lead. So I think the Cardiff Kamalas just positioned themselves a lot better again in game 3. So yeah. It was unfortunate that the Marowaks ended up losing their last game of the season, but ending their playoff contention.
I think that Barraskewda, I think I want to make one more point about that Barraskewda, actually.
Go for it.
I actually really don't like the fact that it was choice banded. I really liked a Barraskewda lead if it had Protect, especially. Because what you can do that I like to do sometimes is if you can set up Trick Room, and you do have like a really fast mon like Barraskewda, you actually do like it having like a move like Flip Turn, which basically makes it so that instead of usually at the beginning of the turn where you flip turning with a super fast Barraskewda under Trick Room, you're moving last in the turn, meaning that the positioning of the Marowak can be at the end of your turn where it's not being threatened by an attack, right?
Yes.
And if you whip the Barraskewda with a nice item, maybe a Focus Sash, who knows what else. I guess Rabombi had it, but like you basically protect turn 1, turn 2, you get a free flip turn off. If you have enough protection for it. And boom, you get a free Marowak out on the field for the second turn of Trick Room, basically.
It's
which is really
funny
nice.
that you say that, actually, because I was thinking the exact same thing, but for a U-turn Rabombi.
Yeah, that too. Either way, just a nice little
If
position.
if you're using a switch turn last, it's a guaranteed free switch because they can't attack the Pokemon that's coming in.
Exactly.
Okay, so we move on to the Dartlook Ninjas versus the Somerville Scraggies. Now, the footage for this game was suboptimal, to put it kindly, but it was watchable towards the end of the games, so I couldn't bear to watch through the first bit. The audio wasn't great, and the footage itself was basically non-existent. But what looks like to be a very strong game from both sides, and the Dark Lords playing really well to get this 2-1 victory over the Somerville Scraggies. Masenko, you sat through that better than I did. Have you got some thoughts on that?
God, it's going to take me a minute to sort of remember exactly what's going on there. But I think the biggest thing I saw was, obviously Celesteela was doing really well. I think, let me just go ahead and look at the
Battle report.
Battle report real quick, see if I can jog my memory for a second. Yeah. Okay, so there's this great. Yeah, I remember now. So Grimmsnarl plays a big part in this game, I think, in terms of damage control, because you have a Regirock here with a coaching Cobalion next to it. And I think the strategy that Tyler wanted to go for was, well, Regirock can't be intimidated, right? Can't get the stats dropped on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to max it. It's tanky enough to handle most of what he can bring. I'm just going to spam coaching into it with my Cobalion, and what's it going to do? It's just this big bulky, unkillable Regirock being
Regirock.
spammed with.
It was also Assault Vest, wasn't it?
Yeah, it must have been.
I think it was.
Remember
I think it was Assault Vested. Going for Max Quakes. It was going for Max Quakes where possible. It was going for Rockfall and Max Lightning. So yeah.
And so I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Grimmsnarl was equipped with a Reflect. So setting that up was pretty crucial for some huge damage mitigation. But even more so, what's even more crucial was this Power Swap tech, which basically makes it so that if you basically swap any stages in attack or special attack with your opponent. So all those coachings being given to the Regirock, you can just power swap it. And since Regirock's clear body doesn't really care, like it doesn't affect, it's not like lowering his stats. Technically, it works, and you steal his sort of attack boosts, which are really, really good, really good tech. I'd actually say that's probably tech of the week, and I'll probably write that down at some point.
No, I agree.
And then even worse for the Somerville Scraggies is, guess who's in the back? Suicune.
Yeah, I thought that was really smart.
Yeah,
good,
just unkillable.
It was
It was tanking. What was it tanking? It was tanking straight up like thunder
punches
from.
Yeah, it doing less. It looked like less than a third of Suicune's health. It was definitely at max a 4-hit KO, at minimum a 4-hit KO.
Didn't Stamendale say something about like a sucker punch on the Grimmsnarl or something? Can I see that in like the lobby?
I think he might have had sucker punch, but he never got KO with the Grimmsnarl. So
yeah,
but he made it sound like it was key to his win in game 1 since we couldn't really see it. But I have to.
Yes,
I didn't watch.
I think it got like important chip damage off, and as we just discussed, like some disruption.
So yeah, so basically, I think what's really interesting about this match, and I guess I'll move on to sort of like takeaways, is you have, I would argue, two sort of control teams, right? You have a team that likes to be like Somerville Scraggies. They like to be really bulky. They like to power up with their supportive mons, providing those power ups. Usually it's going to be Comfy, it's going to be Dracloak giving beat up to Cobalion, etc. In this case, it was Cobalion being a bit of a supportive mon, giving coaching to Regirock, right?
Yep.
But on the other hand, you have DLG with another really strong control type team with this, especially this Grimmsnarl lead. Yes, he didn't bring out the Incineroar, but well, that's another control mon in a lot of ways. Jolteon providing some fast sort of chip damage and pivot, and Suicune just being this bulky mon sitting behind Reflect with a Celesteela sitting behind a Reflect. It's like super duper hard to. It's almost like a wet noodle like fight, like a pool noodle fight.
Yes.
Where it's like two really big bulky mon just kind of punching each other down slowly. But what gives DLG the edge here is that ability to deny the Regirock those power boosts in the way that it wanted to, and having a Suicune as well, which is generally pretty good for his strategy. There's no.
Was the power swap on Grimmsnarl? Is that one of Grimmsnarl's Sprankster moves?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I was saying, I was agreeing with what you're saying. I think it could have been over a lot quicker as well, if not for the fact that the Celesteela was a physical Celesteela. If it was a special Celesteela, it could have ignored the coaching boosts a bit more, and it had done a little bit more damage. I know it was Assault Vest, but like a +1 defense Regirock, +2 defense Regirock is still bulkier than an Assault Vested in Sand Regirock,
I would say Regirock still put in work. It's a 5 and 2 KD at the end of the day. Same as the Celesteela, so we can see why it became his kill leader in this week.
Relatively quickly, too.
But as you say, I think it was that. I think it was
Sorry,
that.
go ahead.
I think it was that denying of the extra bit of damage from the Regirock with the power swap. I mean, it was only using it at like a +1 or when it was a +2 or whatever. But just denying that extra bit of damage output meant that this Suicune in the back was able to come in after the chip damage to the Regirock and just clean up.
Exactly. After the max was over, it was just a Suicune. You really need a lot of investment to kill a Suicune. You need a really strong Mon who can two-hit KO it most of the time. Like, I don't think there's any Mon that I can think of that can just straight up OHKO it
without being maxed.
Yeah. Well, even with being maxed out, like without any sort of power boosts on it. I'm trying to think, like maybe
Rillaboom.
Kartana can Rillaboom? Yeah,
Rillaboom
that
can
makes
win.
sense.
Rillaboom with max Drum Solo.
Yeah, is like life orbed and stuff as well, or
Like
just
a holding life orb probably could.
Yeah.
But this is the thing that we see with the Dark Lords team is that it's this really bulky, really disruptive team, and the Some of Us Scraggies is a team that likes to set up, and if the Dark Lords are able to deny some of their setup or remove some of their boosts, wasting their setup, then it's going to be hard for the Some of Us Scraggies to just punch through the Dark Lords team, and this is why we ended up seeing this close match, but ultimately ended up with the Dark Lords winning out.
Yeah, definitely.
Really good prep from both sides, though. It was like seeing the prep from both teams. It was really good, and it made for us. If the match had been able to have been played properly, like as in recorded, then I think it would have been a hell of a good match to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
why don't we move on?
Yep. Congratulations to the Dark Lords. Your playoff contentions are still alive, and the Somerville Scraggies taking another loss, which is
interesting.
Which is very interesting. It's really opening up the final few spots. So, Charlotte Beedrills versus the Bavarian Landorus. And now, going into this match, the Charlotte Beedrills needed to win 2-0 to keep their playoff contentions alive. And they needed, which the Beedrills did a brilliant job of. Unfortunately,
it was too little too late because of the Dark Lord's Greninja's wins over the Somerville Scraggy. That knocked me out.
Yes, it was unfortunate as even though you did everything you could in these last few weeks to try and get your playoff to keep yourself in playoffs, you also had to rely on a lot of these other matchups going in your favor, like the Dark Lord Greninjas versus the Scraggies.
The Merseyside one went in my favor. The Merseyside matchup went in my favor.
The Merseyside Marowaks losing was in your favor. Then you played your match. Then the Dark Lords played theirs, and the Dark Lords winning against the Somerville Scraggies basically meant that you couldn't make playoffs at that point.
Because couldn't get that 6th spot.
Yeah, because the Dark Lords is still yet to play the Cardiff Kamalas, and one of those two teams will finish on a 6 record.
Yeah.
And you needed it to be 5. Which is unfortunate, but we'll talk more about the actual match that you played against the Bavarian Landorus, and it was a really good match.
Yeah, it was the first time I could set Trick Room. So the lead was Volcarona and Bronzor against Sableye and Charizard.
Yes.
I go ahead and just do the safe play of Rage Powdering and Trick Rooming, and he does Prankster Sunny Day and Heat Wave. Which my Volcarona lives with like 39 HP, and then Bronzor goes down to Sash. Trick Room goes up, and I just set a light screen. Bronzor goes down. It's done its job. Cradily comes in and basically wrecks house from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is true.
I really like this week. You got to see your sort of harder to use Mons really flourish. I think that Bronzor and Cradily are very. I mean, they're not. I would say they're both very good for their tiers, but they do require a little bit of setup, or not setup per se, but sort of like they need a little bit of room to flourish. But the fact that you were able to use them sort of as a pair And something that I really liked about the Bronzor setting Trick Room here, and then setting up a light screen, then immediately dying. Like, I think the dying part is so important because you get that Credilli out. You saw the sort of contrast between your ability to set up Trick Room and pivot to Credilli versus the Merseyside Marowak's ability to set up Trick Room and pivot to Marowak, right?
Yeah.
It's just a very stark contrast, and you see how well that works out when you can, like, it's just so important. You need, if you have Trick Room, you need to be able to pivot correctly, and
Right.
having like a little squishy Bronzor with a Focus Sash against a Charizard is going to do the trick, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Especially when paired with Volcarona, and you know that Charizard's not going to be safety goggles most of the time. Like, I'd
Right.
be very surprised if it was.
It was Chardy Berry.
Yeah.
Because it already gotten 2 turns of solar power. I was able to get a Meteor Beam off into it, KOing it.
Right.
And what was really something really cool about that that matchup was the fastest mon on the field was Volcarona. And the way I was playing it, I was already I was still kind of going first because I was always like rage powdering or protecting, even in Trick Room. And Volcarona was actually able to survive Trick Room despite being the fastest mon on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked that. And I also really liked, I mean, by God, you have so much improved over this season. Like, I like that you went for the Meteor Beam before you maxed the Credilli, get that special attack boost off. You know, you're safe behind the Volcarona against this Charizard. Like, all of these decisions that you make in this game show that you are definitely have improved so much, because, you know, I think the notorious Bryan thing to do would be to, you know, once you get your carry out, you just max it and go ham, right? But here you showed a lot of restraint, and I think that's shown that you, you know, even though that might not be your preferred play style, certainly is a play style you can adapt to and be, you know, a better player for.
Yeah.
So congrats on all of that, and congrats on a wonderful season as well, by the way.
And then briefly, game 2, I made a really good play. This was actually a play I had been theory crafting in my head, like driving to and from work, because I thought the Waylord he had just picked up was going to be a really good ring. So I had Protect on my Volcarona. So I knew if I ever saw the Waylord up front, I was just going to Protect Volcarona and then just switch in the Cradilli immediately. Yeah. It would have. So normally a Waylord would run Water Spout, but this was a physical Waylord. As we see throughout the battle, it was a physical Waylord. So I guess its water move was probably Waterfall. And turn 1, he maxed immediately the Waylord and clicked Max Geyser. And I just immediately switched in the Cradilli. And then it was just from there, he couldn't really do anything after that. I even got an extra special attack boost with the Meteor Beam going in.
It was a nice use of your Storm Drain.
Yeah. It was the first time someone else procced it. I procced it in week 2. I didn't do very well in week 2, but this was it was a lot of series of firsts for this week. It was the first time I could set Trick Room. First time I baited my opponent into using a water move when Cradilli was coming in. And then it was another Flame Body proc for Volcarona. I've been very lucky with my Volcarona Flame Body procs this season. I think like every week it got at least one Flame Body proc, or it burned something with a Will-O-Wisp. So it was a fun. Volcarona was probably one of my most fun pickups this season.
I was gonna say that you know, obviously the Waylord had to be the one to get the proc, because it was a double agent planted there by Matrix.
Yeah.
Oh dear, it was a shame because of it. The Waylord.
Oblivious.
Yeah, the
Waylord had to be oblivious.
The Waylord would have been typically, if you're running Whaler Physical, then like you're quite okay to run it either Water Veil or Oblivious. It doesn't really matter. But because of he's going up against a team which does have Intimidate in Stoutland, like that's probably why it was run Oblivious and over Water Veil, which honestly was unfortunate because he probably would have preferred the Water Veil in this matchup because there was no Intimidate.
Okay.
However,
Just outline this.
yeah, it was just hard. Like, you can't predict that. Like, I'd have
Right.
probably done the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a shame that, and this is the thing with Waylord, and I think I can speak on this because of, mascot. Waylord's not a good mon. It's not.
It's not, no.
It's got an abysmal offense. It can do okay as a max mon if it's doing like max geyser for another water mon to do big damage, or it's going for max quakes to boost up your other mon's special defenses and stuff, because it's bulky. It's always going to live hits. You'll be very hard to one shot a Waylord when it's maxed. But
Right.
because it's got like a base 170 HP, and then you're doubling that when it maxes. So like, who cares about defenses at that point? You just got HP for days. And
Right.
so the Waylord's a good bulky maxmon. So this is when we talk about like support, like a support max. But it wasn't putting out the damage that the Landers could have done with, especially against like a slightly bulkier Trick Room team.
Yeah.
But the Waylord itself was a good bring against the faster Sand team. So I'm not saying it's not bad. It's a bad bring. I'm not saying that.
I thought it was very possible from when we were planning for it. We didn't. I didn't plan any calcs, so I didn't know like what would be a 2-hit KO, what would be an OCO. But I just knew that its damage output would be good enough where it didn't really matter to really calc for damage on a Waylord specifically, because it wouldn't be able to really put in the damage output to where I would need to definitely calc for a 2-hit KO or an OCO at some point.
It also helps that that if we thought that the Waylord would come, but you have this Cradilly switch in with the Storm Drain, so we knew that with Cradilly that we had a decent counter for that Waylord.
Yeah.
And I think, I think this is a game where I want to compliment Bavarian Landers as well on their sort of brings. I think they brought most of the right mons.
Yeah.
I think that, unfortunately, that Cradilly just really did a lot of work, and that Bronzor did a lot of work in both games. I think there were a couple weird things I saw. I don't want to like get too nitty gritty, but like Healing Wish Latias kind of makes sense, but I'm not 100% sure what the strategy was per se. Maybe they were trying to do something similar to what we're suggesting for Merseyside Marowak, which is trying to get a good pivot for his Charizard potentially.
It was definitely interesting.
But we've talked about Ally Switch Sableye in the past. We're just gonna skip over that one.
It was unfortunate, that one as well, because I'm pretty sure when he used the Ally Switch, you went for a spread move.
Yeah,
that was unfortunate.
But overall, I'd say like I really do think that the Waylord was a great bring. I think like Tangela, Charizard, Sableye, Urshifu, Latias all make a lot of sense. So I still think, like, despite the fact that this was a pretty hearty 2-0 in favor of the Charlotte Beedrills, I still do think that Bavarian Landorus's prep in general still remains really strong.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this was just an unfortunate week for them where they maybe got caught off guard a little bit. Kind of like...
Yeah, I think it's one of those instances where my 6 just really countered his 6, so he didn't really have much he could really do.
Yeah,
I think that's just what that came down to.
I will say,
I brought maybe a couple fours instead. Maybe it might have been a different story, but I think with just what the 6 I brought and the 6 he brought, it was just too much. It was just too much for him to be able to handle.
I did like the idea of the Healing Wish, because what he did is he uses Healing Wish on Laios, and I don't know if Laios was pretty healthy or if it was low health. I'm pretty sure it just literally. Yeah, I think it had a little.
It was a little.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the only thing Laios did was literally Healing Wish and then died. But what was cool is that, which is something I didn't know. This is the interaction of Healing Wish. I thought it always, whatever mon is in the back that comes out, always gets healed.
And because he brought out Sableye, I thought that was a wasted healing wish, wasn't it? But you go, and this is the only time I will commend the use of an ally switch, because it was actually really smart. And he goes for ally switch on Sableye next to the Wailord, not to redirect an attack,
It was
just to move the Wailord over to that slot to take the healing of the healing wish. And I didn't know that's how a healing wish worked. So this is a eye opener for me. But you got this Wailord back up to basically full health. Well, I think it was full health, and I really
when it would just come down from max.
Yeah.
And it was a little over half,
Mhm.
and it got back to full.
And what I liked about that is because of Wailord's still a bulky, it's still a lot of health investment, and I think he'd got a few max Quake boosts from that. And it actually came down from it came down to the point where it was actually a little bit more difficult for you to remove this Wailord, even with like the plethora of attacks. And I feel like if he was in a bit more of a better position when he did this, which is not to say that it was his fault for being in that position. Like he was put in a position because of your pressure. If he'd found himself in a more favorable position to take advantage of his healing wish, then this Wailord could have been actually kind of threatening in this endgame.
Yeah, because all the Pokemon I brought to both first game and second game were special attackers, so I had nothing for to ignore the special defense stat and go for the physical. So I basically if he had gotten it off a little sooner, maybe if the Wailord had a little more damage output, maybe it could have been a little different. But
Yeah, I think that's what the Wailord was missing, was this damage output.
Yeah,
because it's a Wailord.
Because even though it got back to full health and was the last Mon I'd KO'd, I was just way too far ahead for it to
for it to bring back. But still, gotta commend the tech for it, because it was actually really smart. I really liked it.
It was good tech.
Definitely very cool tech, for sure. I think I mean, if you're trying to get Wailord to like have like once again, if you're running Wailord, it's going to take a lot of investment to make it work. If that's one of the ways you invest into it, is just to have like a healing wish sort of like strategy. That kind of does make a little bit of sense. It's like a very tanky mon. You get that full heal back onto it. It's pretty insane, honestly.
Exactly. Okay. So that was the Beedrills versus the Landorus.
Yeah. And congrats on the win.
Yeah, it's just an commiserations on missing out on playoffs. But the Landorus, with a game in hand, they can still make playoffs if they beat the Cardiff Kamalas. Is it? No. Who do they play?
I did.
Oh, the Bavarian.
Alive, and other games had to fall in my favor, and it's just unfortunate that it didn't. This week.
And the Bavarian Landorus having to keep their contentions alive by playing the Amateur Alchemies next week, so that'll be interesting.
Oof.
Talking about the Amateur Alchemies, well, I say next week, it's this week. Talking about the Amateur Alchemies, we move on to what is probably one of the weirdest matches this season. The Amateur Alchemies versus the Drowsy Dracozolt. And the Drowsy Dracozolt already having a guaranteed playoff, like already guaranteed for playoffs. They decided to do a little bit more creative of a set. And the Amateur Alchemies, with having 3 games left to play and limited time to prep for this first match, they also decided to go of a creative, more of a creative mode. It was quite funny because you both independently came up with the fact that, I'm going to just have a bit of fun with this match. And it led to a really interesting situation where we were seeing Max BHM, which is reasonable, and Max Klefki, which is a little bit more out there.
Klefki only maxed this the third game. I did max Venusaur's games 1 and 2, unfortunately. Not unfortunately. I mean, it's a good max, but it's not as interesting a max as a Max Klefki.
And in that third game, you really positioned Klefki very well in that matchup.
Yeah.
I think every time the Klefki was in, you immediately switched it out so it couldn't take any damage or whatever. And then it was at the very end where it was basically a 2v Klefki, and Klefki had enough damage output to KO the 2. I think that's how the third game went. Something like that.
We'll get into the third game more in a minute. What were your thoughts going into this match, Masenko?
There weren't many thoughts, honestly.
I could tell.
It was basically I had just come off a loss from the Bavarian Landers,
A brutal
and
loss at
I was
that.
not a great game in my end. And I just felt like it basically was sort of the catalyst for a bit of a burnout, from Pokemon for the week, and just I was like, you know what? Even with this loss, I'm guaranteed playoffs. If I have to forego having a bye for being a top 2 spot, that's fine. I think really what I value right now is the break and the rest and relaxation that I can get from just sort of like chilling out before playoffs.
Uh-huh.
So I hopped on a call with you guys, and I said, "Hey, Zam, can you come up with something stupid for me to do?" And you guys came up with Max Klefke, and this was something I actually wanted to do at some point anyway. So I was all for it, and I just threw together a team for it. Did a couple practice matches, did a little bit of tweaking on the EVs, but honestly, not much more than I would say, like maybe an hour or two in terms of prep for this week. So yeah, I mean, this game was definitely something something else.
Yeah. It was also nice that you brought Flygon, they brought Lantern, made me happy.
Yes, having the mostly neglected Mons come. I felt pretty good about bringing Flygon, honestly. Even when I was sort of sitting down and thinking, if I'm going to take this game seriously, Flygon was definitely one of the biggest considerations. Like, even though they have that Lapras,
Yes.
I still think Flygon did pretty good into their team overall and was willing to try to play around it, around the Lapras. But yeah, I mean, just this game kind of went down to. I mean, I guess game 1, I sort of had a sun mode with Venusaur, and it went fine. I think I boosted the right times with my Max Quake. That was pretty solid against this Alchemy Max, which I honestly didn't expect.
Yeah.
I expected a Max with the Alchemy doing decorate stuff, which is why I taunted it turn 1 with Gallade. But no, instead they're deciding to go Perish Song strats with Max Alchemy.
And what you didn't know is that Lapras also had Whirlpool on it.
Oh my god, is that why? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So there was Whirlpool, Perish Song, Helping Hand, and Freeze Dry.
Yeah. Not the best set.
It wasn't.
But definitely a fun one. And I think I think the Lapras did end up getting a kill on Venusaur there. I think my biggest MVP this week, though, kind of was the Ninetales. Like, it was just doing so much work. I like the power swap strat that I sort of appropriated from you in terms of the Tangela with Leaf Storm in your.
Yes, back in the VDL League. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty nice.
Power swap time.
And yeah, so basically Ninetales did really good in game 1. I got swept game 2.
Yes, I think we got to address the game 2 because it was a 4-0 loss, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a full sweep.
Full sweep, and it all came down to this first turn where who did you lead?
I think I went Kangaskhan, and it must have been
Gallade.
No, I don't think I brought Gallade that game. I think I brought Klefki.
Yeah.
I think it was Klefki. And I think I switched out turn 1, and No. So he led Chandelure plus the Behem. He protects Behem and goes for a Trick Room with Chandelure.
Yes.
And I think
you protect Klefki.
Yeah, I protect Klefki, so I'm expecting this Max Chandelure to go hammer into it, and I want a weakness policy proc off it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I think I went for Behem.
Or did you rock slide?
You went for Behem with something. That's right.
Yeah, it wasn't a Kangaskhan. Maybe it was a maybe it was Ninetales. Maybe I just overheated into it. I'm pretty sure that might be what it was.
Yeah. I can't remember what it was, to be fair. I remember you doing
a rock
something.
slide from
And
Genghis Khan at some
was
point.
game 3.
and the
Rock slide
fact,
was
yeah,
game
and the fact that basically the result was you were expecting with this lead that it was going to be a Max Chandelure with a Trick Room BHM, and what actually happened was a Protect Trick Room Chandelure Max BHM, and that Max BHM with Meteor Beam, which was Rockfall. I think it had it had Psychic for Max Mindstorm. It was just
Are you
sweeping
sure it
through your
wasn't?
team. Sorry?
Are you sure it wasn't a power gem and not a?
No, it was Meteor Beam.
Was it really?
It was Meteor Beam.
Interesting. 'Cause I know Behem does get power gem, which is like a really good special rock move
Hmm.
for the most part.
No, yeah, I knew it was me. I've seen his set, so I know it's Meteor Beam.
Mhm.
This BM was putting in work, and it was life orbed as well. So like BM does have a decent special attack. So
It was doing big damage.
it was doing huge damage. It was going
But
through your team.
if it was going, we probably didn't have analytic as his ability, did it?
I don't know what his ability is, truthfully, but like it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt for it to have not had analytic. If it had analytic, it was fine because of it just do increased damage outside of Trick Room, but you're going for your main strat inside Trick Room. But yeah, no, that game 2 was a bit of a sweep to say the least, and then game 3.
I didn't expect it.
Game
3.
The one that decided it.
Game 3 was, I think, you got a bit of favorable RNG in that game as well.
Yeah,
I don't think it was like game changing, but I remember there being like a crit on his Trick Room setter, and it flinched him or something. I think there was a crit and it flinched, but in the same turn.
I flinched the lantern.
Yes.
And I wish it was the other way around.
Yeah.
I wish he could that Trick Room up, because I would have been in a much better spot without that Trick Room.
Yes.
That game, basically, I was able to deal with a lot of his stuff up front, which was nice. He was down to 2 Mons by the end, but then once again, I had zero answer for this Max Behem, so I just had to sort of like wait it out by doing a bunch of switches.
Yep.
And then eventually I just sort of like planned out the switches and thought about what he might target. And eventually I'm able to stall out the Trick Room and the Max, and I just do my Max Klefki strat, which was fun.
Yeah, it really was. I remember that Lantern was going for an Eerie Impulse that turn. It flinched.
Yeah.
Which would have been nice to have got on your special mons, but yeah, it was as I say, very interesting. Like, never thought I'd be talking about a match where there was a Max Klefki and a Max Behem in the same game.
Yeah.
But here we are. So yeah, guarantee. Sorry.
I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say about this match. I'm not gonna lie. It's like,
meme
it's
versus meme.
It's a bunch of yeah. I do think that
one meme was better than the other.
Yeah, to some degree. I think I had fewer memes, and since I did bring a sun mode, technically, but still, I mean, I just didn't bring any max anything for that Max Behem, so I guess I should have prepped better. Maybe that's the takeaway. I think maybe we both should have prepped better, but I think our prep was intentionally bad. So
it made for a nice match.
It kind of mirrors when Merseyside brought the Max Claydol against me. I don't think that was something I couldn't predict a Max Claydol, and I don't think you could predict Max Behem the way it was being played. So I think it's just one of those hindsight is 20/20 things.
Yeah.
But we get the win. We take those, and it guarantees you a top 2 spot. So.
Yep.
And the Amateur Alchemies are now fighting for their place with taking their 3rd loss of the season. Started off strong, bit shaky now. So we move to Lucarios and the Lux Rays. Obviously, the Lucarios dropped a few weeks back, so the Lux Rays get a free win there. I never played this week, the Welsh Wailord, so I play a makeup match next week. Because I was supposed to play who was I supposed to play? I think I was supposed to play the Lily Cove Lycan Rocks in this week. which is a shame.
Yeah.
Would have liked to have played them as my final match. Not who I am playing. But no, our last match is the South Korean Swords versus the Krumach Colossals. And this game was actually pretty close. The end games were pretty similar. And I think this is a testament to how well the South Korean Swords are at playing this aggressive mode. They saving that Ndidi in the back was great, both games.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's basically all I want to say about it. Mostly, like he just knows how to play the tempo game, right?
Mhm.
You lead with a strong lead. You kill his stuff. He kills your stuff. You don't care because you have better stuff in the
Yeah,
back.
you got Tarakian. You got Tarakian for the beat up, and then you've got a choice spec Ndidi expanding force. And you know the psychic terrain's most likely to be down because of the opponent also has an Ndidi.
Right. And like if you have a max, he maxes Septile game 1. Did he max? Who did he max game 2?
Almaldo.
Still Septile. Armaldo. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like those mons, yes, they're I think this goes to show exactly fitting into his play style, right? You have mons which, generally speaking, lower on the damage side, but you use them as max targets. You're amplifying their damage. You bring them up front. You're going to know that they're going to do more damage. And what are they up against? A Cryagonal. Like,
I know.
yes, pretty high stats in some regards, but generally speaking, is not going to be able to match that tempo, right? Like if you get a bad turn with this Cryagonal, you're going to lose on that tempo. You're going to take too much damage and be forced to sacrifice it,
Which we were seeing, like a rock slide into the Cryagonal was doing more than half its health.
Yeah, from max, right? Like a non-maxed Armaldo's taking out more than half of a maxed Cryagonal's health. It's just it's like it's just a matter, once again, tempo. That's the name of this game.
Mhm.
You have big targets hitting each other quickly and just trying to get more damage than the next person. And when you have a Tarakian and an Ndidi in the back, well, it's going to do the trick, right?
Yeah. I do think there was two vital turns in both games. So game 1, turn 1. If Dr. Dave had just used Follow Me there in turn 1 instead of going for a Protect on the Ndidi, he guaranteed himself getting that Trick Room up. And failing to get that Trick Room up, really, I feel like he kind of suffered from. Because the Clink Clang would have done damage the following turn to the Sneasel, like would have two-shot it regardless of the sash. And yet the Ndidi would have taken, but then the Ndidi would have survived because the Ndidi would have taken some damage. But I don't know. As I say, I just think that it was just there. It's always best to just use Follow Me because he could have also have redirected that Ice Shard. I mean, if he's leading this Sneasel Sceptile, you kind of expect that the Sceptile is weakness policy, especially when the Sceptile has come out onto Psychic Terrain. You haven't seen a Psychic Seed go off, so you know it's not Psychic Seed. So using Follow Me there is always the safest play. That's what Ndidi's there for. Yeah, it takes damage, but that's exactly what Ndidi does. It takes damage, redirects from what you want to do. It stops the opponent from using Ice Shard to proc his own weakness policy, which he did turn 2. And I feel like not getting that Trick Room up really put him in a bad position for the rest of the game. Not a bad position, but it would have been more favourable being inside Trick Room. Because then he is free to go for it. Sorry?
I almost think that maybe the Trick Room was a bit superfluous. Like, I think you might want Shift Gear instead, right? That does raise the speed of Clink Clang by 2, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think so.
Or is it just 1 and then 2 for the other? Because if you're able to get the Clink Clang outspeeding other things, like that's maybe better max target too. Let me double check. Shift Gear, yeah, speed by 2, attack by 1. So you can double this. You can double this Clink Clang speed. You're outspeeding basically everything. You like Clink Clang against Tarakian better. You like Clink Clang against most other things
Yeah,
better, I'd say.
I think follow me shift gear would have been nice there. Yeah, you are right on that.
I think that's better because
I mean,
what
he still would have been taunted. But he wouldn't have gotten it off.
Well, no.
Oh,
If you went for follow me, no, he wouldn't have been.
All right, I thought you said protect, and I was like, I misunderstood.
So
I'm not so much critiquing the first turn that you were saying. I'm more critiquing the moveset because I think shift gear there to me makes more sense because why are you setting up trick room when you have a Cryagonal in the back, which is like insane speed?
That's I agree with.
Yeah.
So that
Then
doesn't make sense to me.
the other turn was in game 2, and I'm trying to think what happened. There was a crucial turn. I did like the protect and stuff on the Mudsdale. Oh, that was why. I don't think Cryagonal was his max target game 1. I think Mudsdale was his max target game 1. But he brought Cryagonal as a backup just in case, which is fair.
Yeah.
The Mudsdale wasn't doing what you'd want Mudsdale to. I think Cryagonal was also special because of you would imagine it was running Ice Shard to proc the weakness policy on Mudsdale, which is what I expect his game plan was to bring Mudsdale out. Then Cryagonal comes out last and Ice Shards into the Mudsdale to break the weakness policy even inside Trick Room. But yeah, there was something else in game 2. I don't remember the exact thing, but oh well. The Colossals end up finishing off with only a 1-1 win this season, and the South Korean Swords secured themselves a 2-0 win, which allows them to be at minimum finishing 3rd place. So they are guaranteed a 3rd place finish, regardless of how the Somerville Scraggies, Amateur Alchemies, or the Dark Lord Greninjas do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Week 10 rankings. Well, results. That's supposed to say results on there, not rankings, but who cares? My bad. So we move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about the leaderboard. So Week 10, we've got the Drowsy Dracozols up at the top with 8-2, the only team to have scored 8 wins, one of 2 potential teams. We've got myself, the Welsh Whale, who didn't play this week at 7-2. However, a win in my last matchup will secure myself the top spot. Wherefore, a loss will drop me down to at least 4th at the lowest spot I could be at. We've got the South Korean Swords, as we've just said, they're in 3rd with a 7-3 with a high differential of +9. Basically meaning that they will be guaranteed a 3rd place spot, because even if the Amateur Alchemies or the Somerville Scraggies win out their last 2 games 2-0, the highest each of them can be is a +8 or a +7, which is still below the South Korean Swords win differential. So the Amateur Alchemies, the Somerville Scraggies, they're both in 4th and 5th at the moment with a 5-3 score. 2 games left to play. This could mean that they either go up to, well, the Amateur Alchemies can either finish in 4th. They can't finish any higher. Unless, actually, they can. Because I can finish on a +7 score, and they can finish on a +8, so they could overtake me if they win out their next 2 games, 2-0. But that's a lot harder, I think, especially given their team, their matchup. One of their opponents, in fact, is the Somerville Scraggy. So we already know that this top 6 is going to change a lot in this final week.
Yeah.
The Somerville Scraggies, again, are having to face the Amateur Alchemies. So one of these teams will finish on at least a loss of 4. Which could put them down to the 6th spot or keep them in the 5th spot. It'll be interesting to see. But I expect the South Korean Swords going into the playoffs will be playing either the Amateur Alchemies or the Somerville Scraggies. Wait, no. Right. That's wrong. What I've just realised is that the Amateur Alchemies and the Somerville Scraggies, if they do finish 4th and 5th, not only do they play this week, but they also play round 1 of playoffs. It's very likely that they could end up facing each other in round 1 of playoffs.
Right, because 3 and 6 play, and then 4 and 5 play.
Yeah,
right?
So it's looking increasingly likely that they could play in round 1.
What an interesting development in that regard.
Yeah. So we've got the Charlotte Beedrills here in 6th, and
yes, the Beadrills are out of contention because of some of the teams below them at the moment. I've still got like 2 games to play, and they're all guaranteed. The Beadrills are guaranteed to miss playoffs at least by a 7th place. They'll at best they can finish 7th. So it's unfortunate, just missing out this season.
But still impressive.
I mean, you can see this win-loss ratio.
Yeah,
like
I mean, week 10.
I got a 500. I got a 500 on the actual record, but positive win loss. So that's kind of hard to do. I joked around. I think it was in the podcast you didn't get to upload that. Even though I was kind of salty about the 1-2 losses, they were actually very beneficial for me in the long run. Even though I didn't make playoffs because of them, they were still slightly beneficial in that they kept me in the playoff contention for as long as they did.
I mean,
as long as I was.
As we can see here, the Amateur Alchemies are 5-3. You're 5-5 with 2 extra losses, and yet you share the same game differential of +4, which means that if they were to lose their next 2 matches, at best they finish +2. So you would finish above the Amateur Alchemies in that sense. Like you would finish above any of these teams at 5 wins if they lose out their games.
Yeah.
So this is the top.
Which just
sorry.
to show how close these playoffs are, right? Like,
yes.
The fact that we can already rule Bryan out, unfortunately, yet here he is in 6th place in the week 10 before certain matches have resolved. Like, wow. Like, just imagine, how close behind, just barely missing out on it. I think it sucks, but it's a testament to 2 things: for A, how competitive this league was, and B, how well Bryan improved from last season as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is the top 6 as it stands. However, this week we're also giving you 7th through 12th. Ignore the ranks on the side. We've got the Dark Lord Greninjas in 7th with 5-3, which is just sitting behind the Charlotte Beadrills with a +2 record. The Southeast Luxrays are 5-4, same as the Bavarian Landorus, and the same as the Cardiff Kamalas. And the only thing differing each of these teams is literally +2 a win-loss record, and then the KDs for the 7th through 9th. Like, this is how close the Dark Lord Greninjas are with the Bavarian through to the Bavarian Landorus. They are all on the same win-loss records. The Dark Lord Greninjas are actually slightly better with an extra game in hand compared to these other teams, and being on the same win-loss record. So they could, however, if they lose, then they do fall behind all these teams. So the Dark Lord Greninjas have 2 games to play. They are possibly finishing 7-3 at best, +6, which is still just below me, which means that the highest they can finish is 5th, I believe. The Southeast Luxrays, they can finish on a 6-4 with a +4 differential, and I believe that could mean that the highest they can finish is 6th place, 6th. They could technically finish they could finish 5th, depending on where the Dark Lords finish. The Bavarian Landorus, again, is another team that can take either 5th or 6th. But if it comes down to the top 6, if it comes down to these 3 teams being tied for 6th spot, they will be taken on the head-to-head over the kill difference. So it will go record, game differential, and then head-to-head, which, unfortunately for the Southeast Luxrays, they lose out on, as the Dark Lord Greninjas and the Bavarian Landorus both beat them in regular season.
Right.
But as the Dark Lord Greninjas and the Bavarian Landorus, I don't believe have played each other yet. They will be the one who goes through will be based on the kill death KD.
Yeah.
Which I think the Greninjas have a slight edge on.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting lineup of teams going through. I think, why don't we just move on ahead to sort of talking about the matches? Maybe we can have sort of more predictions about who we think might be winning those matches and what those scores might look look like at the
For
end
sure.
of the day.
Just before we do, the Cardiff Kamalas are 5-4. I didn't actually touch upon them. I think they have it the hardest, and I don't know if they are able to get into the top because of 6-4 will. But we already know that at worst we've got 4 teams at 6. So they could potentially get up there, especially if they directly play some of these contenders, such as the
They play the Bavarian Landers, right?
no, they play the
Bavarian
Dark Lord
Rangers.
Greninjas. That's who they play. They play the
Oh,
Dark
okay.
Lord Greninjas, which is a direct competition, so they can have a direct impact on finishing above them. Because if they win,
Yeah.
then they go up +2 or +1. The Greninjas go -1 or 0, and then they're above the Greninjas. And the Marowaks, unfortunately, are also knocked out of playoff contention, being 5-5, lower than Bryan at -1. And this just again shows like 5-5 and -1 compared to 5-5 +4.
Yeah, and the difference in rank, right? You have 11th and 6th. Like there's tons of teams in between the two of them.
I mean, we have from 4th to 11th all on 5 wins.
Yeah.
It's insane. And then poor Dr. Dave with the Chroma Colossals down there 12th with 1-9.
We love Dr. Dave.
Mhm.
I think hopefully he does better next season. I think he's a fun player, and I hope he comes back for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so as you say, we'll move on to the Johto Division. So this was the rankings as of last week. I actually haven't. I can re-update. So this was never actually shown. The rankings, but this is where we landed on the rankings for end of week 9.
I'm surprised you kept me at first.
Well, what I did is gave it open to, I guess, the Merseyside Marowaks to decide the rankings for the week.
Oh, great! Yeah, that's pretty good.
So yeah. So where do we think
Okay.
we are finishing on with them this week? I don't think we need to go too thingy. I think we got to leave you up in the top spot. I think the reason why you left there is you had a bad, like an off week, but it wasn't terrible. You could tell it was an off week rather than a off, like, yeah.
Yeah, and like a consistency issue.
Yeah.
You've been fairly consistent throughout the season, so I mean, I don't know if I deserve top spot, honestly, but I mean, I'd say that, I guess I've been one of the more consistent players, especially in the earlier, like compared to, we had some strong runs with the Somerville Scraggies and the South Croydon Soars and the Amateur Alchemies, but during the latter half of the season, I think maybe maybe they're getting a little burnt out. Maybe that some people are exploiting weaknesses that they've found a little bit better. And you can see those cracks starting to show potentially. So maybe I deserve top spot, but who knows, honestly. Like there might be an argument that you even deserve top spot, Matrix, but who knows?
I don't feel it.
I'd even argue maybe the SARS might maybe deserve the
I'm
top spot, even though
still
they
reluctant.
beat even though they'd be the low ranked team, but they're taking the wins, and it was still a really good match. So you can even argue that. I think there's an argument to be made for the SARS as well, which is V Matrix, and for you Masenko.
I honestly think, weirdly enough, I think these rankings are pretty good for the most part. I would swap several things.
I think the top 4 are fine to stay as it is. But I would like to swap these two around.
I'd swap Matrix. I'd put you at 2, and then Tyler at 4.
I didn't play this week, and I know Tyler lost, so maybe South Croydon Soars could move up to number 2.
Yeah, move Soars to 2 and Tyler to 2. I mean, to 3, excuse me.
But I don't think Somerville Scraggies that lost this week was down to major misplays on them. I think their opponent prepped so well that they exploited a not so obvious weakness in the team or type thing.
Yeah.
Wherefore, South Croydon Soars just kind of bust through the Crimmer Colossal, similar to how we've seen him do previous weeks.
I also think Tyler has one of the most powerful teams still anyway, just like on paper.
Yeah.
So it's hard to rank him low, in my opinion. I think top 4 stays. I don't know if I put Dark Lord Greninjas in 5. I might put it in 6. I think Dark Lord Greninjas is a solid 6. Because the thing about the Dark Lord Greninjas is I think they've shown themselves to be sort of ups and downs in terms of their wins. Their wins are very convincing, but their losses are very hard.
That's
Sort
true.
of, I think each match is going to be a matter of whether or not the Dark Lords have a grip on what their game plan is. Because I think, who knows? Honestly, I think they, in general, like they've been playing really well lately. But once again, remember they still have 2 games in hand, and it's gonna be hard for them to prep for both of them in 1 week. They're facing against the Cardiff Kamalas and EU, I believe, right? Those are the
That's
2.
true.
So, I mean, not that I think future games really factors into my rankings here, but I think in general their team is very strong, so 6 is a nice place for them. But I'm worried a little bit about their consistency, and I'm a little worried that they might falter. It really depends on which Dark Lord shows up. Is it going to be the tactical genius, or is it going to be the inexperienced, Pokemon player who didn't know that, Mist was a move?
Yeah. No, I honestly think that's a really fair assessment, and I think the same could be said for 6th through 9th. To be honest, like they all of them have shown like really strong, like they could be really strong players. Yeah, it's a matter of consistency as to which they are on the day that they're playing.
Yeah, and I really want to put Bryan higher, but I think 8's fine. I think in general, like as a player, Bryan has only grown through this season. I think his consistency has gotten more and more, and you see every single match he's doing well by the end of the season. Like even taking those 2-1s, you see he's like putting up a hell of a fight, and really coming to each match super prepped.
Yeah, my only bad match was week 2. That was my only bad match this season.
Yeah, against a team that's already dropped.
So much improvement.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to say, to put whether or not I would maybe even argue he goes ahead of Bavarian Landorus, but for me the Bavarian Landorus are such a question mark, just because of, like, once again, I feel like they had such good weeks these last couple weeks, and then they played against you and you just completely deconstructed everything they were wanting to do. Maybe it was just a bad matchup. Maybe they just couldn't do much, but who knows? Like, I mean, you did beat them, so maybe you should go ahead of them in the ranking.
I'd argue just switching me and Bavarian, but not moving me any higher than that.
Yeah.
Just to reflect the win, I guess.
I suppose the only issue I have with moving Bavarian Landorus down even more is that I don't think that one loss merits them moving all the way down from 5th to 8th. Because the last week we ranked them at 5th, and they're still a strong team. And they have another game left to play, and we're not thinking. Wherefore the Beedrills, we've already seen everything they're going to.
One kill each match. They got 1 kill each matchup.
Yeah. And the Beedrills, we've seen every game that they're going to play now. So the Beedrills are pretty certified. We're not going to see anything more from the Beedrills. We're not going to see anything more from the Merseyside Marowaks or the Colossals, nor the Drakazolts or the South Korean Swords.
Yeah.
And I think that the Beedrills have been a strong player all the way through. But at this moment, I don't know if I can agree to move them up above 8th. I think they're still above 2 of the teams that are in contention for playoff spots. And after this week, if the Bavarian Landorus were to lose this last week, I could reasonably say that, yeah, I rank the Charlotte Beedrills higher than where they are right now.
And we'll have a final power rankings as well. So ultimately, this doesn't quite matter. I would say Beach Willis probably should go ahead of them for this week, but you're right in saying that you don't want to drop it too far. So I think we keep it how it is right there, and let's see what happens for next week. Let's see if they can if the Bavarian Landers can prove that that was maybe just a like a bad matchup for them. Maybe they just didn't have the tools they needed for their team to beat you, or whether that was like just a slip up or what. But I mean, in my opinion, based on, I honestly think, there's a pretty good chance that that you go ahead of them anyway next week, based on what I'm maybe predicting happens. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll
So,
100%, 100%.
um,
Lux Rays, I think, fine staying in ninth since they didn't actually play this week. The Cardiff Kamalas have moved up to 10th from 11th, and the Merseyside have moved down to 11th. Because I still think, even though the Kamalas are in contention, I still think they're on the weaker end of being in contention.
yeah.
They've-
I'm honestly, now that we've seen some more games from them, I have stuff to say about their play style, and I think in general, I see that they have good Pokemon intuition overall, but I still think that they make questionable plays a lot, and like maybe aren't as like efficient with what they're doing half the time. I think they made some really good plays this week with the sucker punch, that one game, instead of going for the high jump kick, which was into the Barraskewda against the Merseyside Marowaks. I think they did play pretty well against the Merseyside Marowaks overall, but I'm not sure. I think like it's really hard for me to judge them, like, because I think on one end you have them playing like these really really good games, especially against the Merseyside Marowaks. I saw that was like such a good game, but then looking at one of their losses, against Bryan, even in week 9, like that was a pretty substantial loss on their end, and it didn't feel like they were present for that as
I think
much
a
as
lot of their the strength, whether they're going to do well or not, is if they get the time to prep. Because I think last week maybe they didn't have the proper prep time and they overlooked a couple things, and that's why I was able to exploit their team. Because whenever I get a really good time to prep is when I play the best, I think. So I think that might just be another reflection on whether last week they had enough time to prep, or maybe this week they definitely had a whole lot more time for prepare. So it's just one of those things. We don't really know
I feel
fully what's going on.
I feel the biggest issue when it comes to the Kamalas play is that they're inconsistent. Some weeks they play really well with great knowledge and stuff, and they can beat some really hard teams. And then other weeks they just blunder.
do weird stuff.
Yeah, to put it a better way. So
yeah, it's hard. It's really hard for me to judge where they're at. I mean, you see them picking up wins that you don't think they would, like against Somerville Scraggies. They beat them pretty well. I think it was a 2-1. Let me look back.
And that was partially thanks to a missed prep by Tyler too.
Yeah, so it's just
he
kind of
capitalizes on it.
Yeah, he did what he had to do. He capitalized on a weakness. So.
Here's the thing, though, like, and here's my sort of qualms with it. Like, I think really what's carrying him right now is his team. Like, you have a Cinderace and a Dragapult and a Togepi to redirect for these, and you can kind of just like against many opponents, those Mons are just very threatening, and you can kind of just do a lot of damage, and you're not as punished for mistakes you make for being inefficient, right? I think like if a team doesn't quite have the correct prep or whatever, like a Cinderace will just steamroll them before they can, prep for it.
I know.
And I think with a little good plays here and there, you're gonna win. With a Cinderace, it's just such a good mon. But the question is whether or not he's going to up his prep a little bit, because I think like sometimes the other parts of his team is suffering. I don't know. I don't really like Kabutops coming as much as it has been. It's very, very weak to grass mons, and yes, he's been positioning it well, but like it's a little scary.
I
like
suppose though,
feels
this
weird.
Cinderace really helps to deal with some of those grass mons, like
Yeah.
so that's always beneficial. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he's got an important match this week, so we'll move on to the week 11 predictions.
Sure.
Okay. So, the Johto Division, week 11 predictions. So you see that we've got quite a few repeating teams in here. That's because of a lot of these teams, Somerville Scraggies, Dark Lord Ninjas, and the Amateur Alchemies have got a few makeup matches to play. Some of them have been rescheduled matches from mid-season from drops, and some of them, like the Somerville Scraggies versus the Alchemies and the Ninjas versus the Kamalas, are matches that were supposed to be played in regular season that have been rescheduled for this week. First off, Merseyside Marowaks was supposed to play London Lucarios, but again, the forfeit, so they got a 2-0 win there, so we'll just say that straight off the bat. Okay, so the first match I've got listed here is the Dark Lords Greninjas versus the Welsh Waylords, which is actually most likely to be the last match played this week. And it's actually probably going to be one of the biggest matches because it both influences the top 3 positions / top 4, and it can also influence the top the 6th spot. So probably the match which has the biggest implications to the overall standings of the for the season.
At least. Yeah, I mean, if Dark Lord wins this match, I say he's in a very good position to make it to playoffs. For sure.
I think if he wins this match, I think he makes playoffs.
Yeah. Definitely. And honestly, I feel a little worried for you. I think his team matches up pretty well. Don't think you have like a particularly strong answer to Celesteela that I can see right off the bat.
Pikachu.
Yeah. None that you can particularly use safely.
I agree.
Because like Moltres might be okay, but he has rain mode. He has, I'm pretty sure he has a Rockmon, if I'm not mistaken. He might not though.
No,
Also,
but Celesteela gets. I can hear the cat.
Yeah,
we can hear the cat.
It's just.
But Celesteela gets Meteor Beam, so.
Yeah, exactly. So you have like you can't use Moltres really. I mean, Pikachu's fine, but it's a Pikachu. You're going to have to invest a lot into it to make it be able to actually kill the Celesteela. Not to mention they have a Jolteon who can just like it's a pretty safe switch into Pikachu. So
and we've already seen the power swap Grimmsnarl for clear body mons like Regirock for my Metagross, and he's even got that coverage on the Jolteon which matches my Spectre speed with Shadow Balls.
So tough matchup. I think you're a more knowledgeable and experienced player than him, so that might edge you the win. But this is going to be definitely both a defining and close match, I think. So I'm sorry about the cat meowing, by the way, for people. He's just
needy.
Maybe I'll just.
I think this match. I don't have a lot of things riding on this match. The only thing I get from this match is potentially to top the division. And yes, that would be nice, but at the same time, it's been a lot of a burnout. So I might not end up playing my best. I might not be prepping my best for this match, which is unfortunate. But at the same time,
is definitely in like a lot of these later matches as well.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the 10-week season is a little bit too long. But
definitely.
I can definitely go into this match with decent prep, but a Celesteela team is still a Celesteela team. It's going to be hard, especially against a team that's got so much disruption. I think Celesteela being on a rain team as well as a disruption team, and I keep saying Celesteela, but he's got other great mons. He's got Incineroar, which honestly I can see being weakness policy offensive, because like Fire Dart, that covers so many of my mons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just make sure, Greninjas, I am covering for everything you can run.
Yeah.
I am aware of
I
every
don't
mode.
know what to predict in this one. I'm not going to give a prediction quite yet on this one. I want to see what the other ones are first before I think about this one.
I can back myself, but honestly, I can see the Greninjas running away with this one.
Yeah.
And this is probably the first matchup I've gone, yeah, I think the other team can win.
The Dark Lords Greninjas have made this pact with me that they're going to fight on my honor. So I'm just for the fact that I need them in the playoffs to do that. I'm going to not stand Matrix for this matchup and go with the Dark Lords Greninjas.
Fantastic. No
Sorry,
support from
Matrix.
me this week. On my own podcast.
Don't worry. After your match, I'll start standing you again.
It's fine. But as I say, it's like
I promise.
I'm guaranteed playoffs. The Greninjas aren't. I haven't got as much invested into this match as him. And yeah, as I say, I kind of want that week bye for playoffs so that I can have an extra week of break and prep for my opponent. That would be great. That is brilliant. But that being said, if I don't get that week bye, I still have to beat these opponents at some point anyway. So
yes. All right, moving on to Luxrays versus Scraggies.
I think this is going to be an uphill battle for the Luxrays. I think the Luxrays are going to struggle against the setup that Scraggies can pull out.
Yeah. It's nice that the Luxrays have good disruption mons like Driftblim or setup mons like Driftblim. But, I mean, the real question is, how do you get past Togekiss? How do you stop Regirock? How do you stop Cobalion beat up? You know, it's all a little bit dicey for him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Looking at his team.
Yeah.
I think Aggron has an okay matchup here. This is his new brain. But I mean, you know, because it matches up against the Regirock pretty okay, just being able to launch a max steel spike into it.
It can do well against the Goodra.
Yeah.
Because Goodra, it can tank most of the hits that Goodra throws at it. The Mon it least wants to face up against is Cobalion.
Yes.
And obviously against Cobalion, you want a fire, fighting, or ground type. And this is something that he kind of lacks on his team. He doesn't have a fighting type. He doesn't have a ground type outside of Nidoqueen. And which Nidoqueen's good. Don't get me wrong. Nidoqueen's good.
Scorches.
And Scorcher is a bad matchup. So
yeah. So it's gonna be tough. I think the main carries can kind of just have a lot of breathing room. He's gonna have to think of something very creative in order to deal with them. And like come up with a sort of game plan, play style that deals with it. I can imagine something slower, but I can also imagine something more aggressive. So we'll just have to see what he brings. But with that said, I think Somerville Scraggies probably takes this pretty handily, in my opinion. Their team is just so solid that I think that it's hard for the Luxrays to actually to win this one.
It also doesn't help that he could run Clear Smog for the Driftblim, but that doesn't have an effect on the Cobalion. And then he's having to rely on like Haze or something on the Tapu Fini. The Tapu Fini moves after the Cobalion, so always going to be a little bit difficult. The one saving grace is that, yeah, the Drakloak is very unlikely to be running Choice Scarf, so you kind of know what speed the Cobalion can reach. It's not going to be running max speed. It has to be lower than the Drakloak if he wants to go for beat up.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think the Scraggies will win this match.
What about you, Brian?
I'm in the favor of the Scraggies for this matchup. I just think there's too much that the Scraggy can really have. I think they have more options than the Luxrays do in this matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
we move on to the Scraggies versus the Alchemies. Now, we've already touched upon this in a previous podcast. I think it was in like week 8 or something. So if you want to hear our full thoughts on it, you can go there. I think we can just say I think the Scraggies will win this one. I don't know what I said in week 8, but I think based on the current form of the two players, I think the Scraggies will win.
Yeah, I had a pretty interesting idea for the Alchemies that I won't say here, just because I don't want to spoil it in case they do bring it.
That's fine.
That could give them a pretty nice edge in this matchup.
Mhm.
But it is a little bit risky, and it's gonna have to make sure that the Scraggies don't think about it and like prep around it a little bit. But yeah, that said, I think that the Alchemies once again have a really hard matchup. Scraggy's team is just so good that you just kind of have to respect that. I think, though, I do think that it is a much more favorable matchup for the Alchemies than it was for the Luxrays. I think in general, this team has a decent amount of bulk as well that can kind of live a lot of these things. And if he can find a way to sort of shut down some of the boosts that they're giving to their mons through beat up or coaching, whatever, then I think that will be beneficial, especially since the Alchemies can use their own boosts. So
It's going to be interesting
see.
seeing two setup teams against each other.
Yeah, kind of going to be one of those sort of like combo battles almost. Kind of almost reminds me of the Oshawotts versus the Scraggies in that one week.
Yeah, Jesus. Win off one turn.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it'll be win on one turn in this case,
No.
like it was last time. But you do see, you want two setup strategies kind of thrown at each other almost.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe the Alchemies pull out something unique and interesting that will be more disruptive than setup. But I guess we'll just have to see.
Max.
That
BTM.
said, I'm actually gonna say I wanna vote for the Alchemies on this one. I think some creativity can come in handy here. And if they have the extra time to prep, maybe a little bit of help, they could come up with some pretty interesting things that the Scraggies won't be able to expect.
I've just realised that if you had lost your match this last week, I would have been guaranteed top 2 seed. So thanks for that.
Hey.
So the Bavarian Landorus versus the Amateur Alchemies.
Yeah.
I like the Alchemies here, I think.
I think the Bavarian Landorus are going to bounce back and take the win.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you why. Couldn't tell you why.
I just think
Gut
the Alchemies are a little more consistent in their gameplay than the Bavarian Landers have been this season. So that's just my reasoning. I like the Alchemies a little bit more this week. A little more consistency goes a long way.
I actually feel like the Alchemies have a much better matchup into them.
Yeah.
I think like Lapras in general is threatening to Charizard.
True.
Even with Gastrodon on their side, you do have like I think like an Alchemy and Lapras lead as well in this case is also very good, with Alchemy getting access to grass moves, fairy type moves against like Urshifu and Sableye. Like it's like pretty solid type matchups overall for like what his team wants to be doing anyway.
And then Lapras has access to like Thunder and Thunderbolt, so that would
yeah, and then throw in some like disruption or setup stuff like with Crobat, Raichu, whatever. Yeah. I think you actually take this for the Alchemies. So I'm actually going to vote for the Alchemies in this case as well.
I'm voting for the Landorus because one reason and one reason alone. I think his disruption is more specific to the Alchemies. I think some of the mons he's got, he can disrupt the Alchemies more than what you think.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I don't want to
say anything because I think Funky will know this himself. So.
Yeah, I mean we'll get to that. I think this is going to be. I do think this will be a close match. I don't get me wrong. I don't think this is going to like all of these matches. I don't think any of them are going to be clear 2-0 sweeps, in my opinion.
Mm.
Like,
Right.
all of these matches we're talking about, I think, are going to be close games. Obviously, like these teams have been working hard all season, and I don't think they're going to just roll over without a fight for the most part.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm
two.
envisioning a lot of 1-2s this week. 2-1s, a lot of 1-2s to finish the season off.
What do you think about this matchup, Brian, for Bavarian Landers versus Alchemies?
I said that I like the Alchemies in this matchup because of their. I think they had a lot more consistent gameplay than the Bavarian have.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Sorry, I did hear you say that. I just forgot for a second.
That's fine.
You're good.
So we've got a 2 for the Alchemies, 1 for the Landers this week.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay, and then last match, the Dark Lord Greninjas versus the Cardiff Kamalas. And I'm a lot more confident for the Greninjas in this matchup than I was for the Greninjas in my matchup. I think the only issue is that the Kamalas have the means to take on the Celesteela with their.
But honestly, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, because they're able to control the weather, the Celesteela has a less fun matchup against the Cardiff Kamalas, with them going against a potential sleep-powered Venusaur. They've got the Cinderace in Sun, which, let's be honest, that's going to do work to a Celesteela, even though it is a Celesteela. You've got the Dragapult, which can run Max Flare as well if needs be. I just think the Cardiff Kamalas do have actually an easier matchup against the Greninjas than what I do, but I think it's a difference in the player.
Yeah, I think
it's gonna be the one where he doesn't prep as hard and he misses a very key matchup like he did against me without the Galarian Articuno. Just all really just depends on level of prep on the Cardiff spot, and I think the prep is going to be really good on the Ninjas. He's got AJ helping him, I think, for these two matchups.
Yeah.
So even though there are certain situations where the Cardiff Kamalas might have a little bit more of an advantage, specifically against the Celesteela, I think that the Dark Lord Ninjas are going to have better pieces outside of that Celesteela.
Yeah. I also think that the Celesteela ultimately doesn't really matter in this matchup. Like, yes, it's a very strong Mon that's going to do well. I think the biggest thing here is the fact that you have an aggro team versus a control team, really. Like, you cannot get away with just playing Cinderace Togepi against the Dark Lord Greninja's team.
Right.
Just get away with it. It's not going to happen. They're going to set up Reflect. They're going to set up, Intimidates. They're going to just be super disruptive. They're going to fake you out.
Parting shot, fake out.
All sorts of annoying stuff.
Yeah, I controlled Cardiff in week 9 very well. So there's definitely that. I think that another reason why I think the Greninjas are gonna have more of an advantage in this matchup. They're definitely more aware of their control methods.
And I think Dragapult doesn't have a particularly fond matchup against Grimmsnarl and Aurora either.
Right.
So you fall back on that either. So it's really going to be like Cardiff Kamalas are going to have to, I think personally, just like rely on a completely different strategy if they want to win this. They need to think of something with their team that's not just Cinderace doing Cinderace things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to say. Is that where we've seen some teams will like to lean into their clear body mons or mist to stop the status disruptions. That doesn't really help a mon like Dragapult, which it's fast and offensive, and it gets clear body, but it's still frail. It's still a Dragapult, and if you've got a team that can take the hits of Dragapult, they can easily dispatch that Dragapult.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I want to say about that match. I think that's
agree.
Pretty much it is.
I agree.
And apologies for being a little distracted. I'm trying to handle the kitten while doing this.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm
Because that
going to
was
say the
gonna be-
Dark Lords win this match because I think the Cardiff Kamalas are more inconsistent.
I would agree.
However, they
I
might
think-
just pull out a win. Who knows? Cardiff Kamalas are unpredictable. They pick and
Yeah,
choose when
yeah.
they want to win a match.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
So yeah,
Well then.
that's the end of our regular content. This week, we're also doing a playoff predictions. We're doing it live.
Woot woot.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
So we've got the current teams which are in contention. So straight off the back, we've got these three teams here: the Drowsy Dracozols, the South Chronosaurs, and the Welsh Waytlords. They're the only guaranteed teams that will make playoffs. The other teams that are potentially able to get in are the Somerville Scraggies, the Bavarian Landorus, the Amateur Alchemies, the Southeast Luxrays, the Dark Lord Twin Ninjas, and the Cardiff Kamalas. All of which can get in, but all of which are also in a position where they can be knocked out. So, who wants to start off with what they think their top six looks like?
I can take a shot based on what I was saying.
Go for it.
Based on like the I guess who I predicted would win. I think looking at it, obviously, how would this go? I think the biggest ones would be myself, South Croydon Stores, you, obviously. Like I'm not saying this in a particular order just yet.
Mhm.
And then I think coming up behind those people, just based on the fact that I think that I predicted they would win both their games, the Amateur Alchemies would be coming up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 4. And then the next 2, I would argue, would be probably Scraggies and Dark Lords.
Okay.
Yeah. So those would be my 6. I don't know how they would be placed in any particular order, just because of who would win. If everything goes the way I thought that it would go, and we assume that the Dark Lords lose to you, they would probably be what, in 6th?
Yeah,
So they would go
based on
1 and
this,
1.
yeah.
Scraggies would go 1 and 1 in my book. Then the Alchemies, then South Croydon Stores, then myself, then you. So I think that's going to be the top 6 for me.
Okay. Because yeah, if
Alright.
based on this, if my match went the other way and the Dark Lords won, then they would finish above the Somerville Scraggies and below the Amateur Alchemies. If it went the other way.
Yeah, and I think in general, no matter what, based on the fact that I think that the Alchemies are going to win both their games, this is going to be the top 6 regardless. I mean, I can see the Bavarian Landorus being in one of those 5s or 6 slots. I don't see the Luxrays or the Kamalas making it through personally. But I mean, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
Brian?
My take.
I would agree that those are the 6 that would make it. I think that even like the 6th spot, I would definitely put the Dark Lord Greninjas, and then obviously I would put well, you might be able to switch. I don't want to just mirror his complete 6, so maybe we could like swap 4 and 5.
Oh,
And
you
then
think
I would
okay?
put Masenko ahead of U Matrix.
Ooh, so you think
that
the Dark
can-
Lords
yeah,
are
that-
going to be right?
If Masenko
Yeah,
is
no.
above me, then I have to move down to at least 3rd.
Do a 3rd. Oh, okay, you can't be
I can't be 2nd.
2nd. Okay. Then yeah, we can switch. And if we're gonna put Masenko at 1, and then we can put you at 3 and Source at 2.
That's assuming the Dark.
That would
Greninjas
mean
win.
that the Greninjas win, which
That's
means
relying
that
on the Dark Lords Greninjas winning their matchups, of course.
which would put me here. If you're saying the Somerville Scraggies beat the Amateur Alchemies, then they have to have beaten. To be above the Alchemies, Alchemies would have had to have beaten the Funky, which means Somerville Scraggies would have had to have beaten who else?
Southeast Lux Rays, which is very possible. So you're thinking that one comes 2, that one comes 1. And the Dark Lord Greninjas, if I'm here in third, then they would move up because you're presuming they beat the Cardiff Kamalas, which means that you're looking at something like, I don't know who. I think between the Somerville Scraggies and the Dark Lord Greninjas comes down to who wins out on sets, which I believe is looking at the moment as a wrong one.
The Dark
Lord Greninjas are +2, Scraggies are +3. So yeah, if they were to 2-0, or depending on how they play the matches, this one could be very close. So it's up to you where you think they could be.
I'd be good with where you got them right now.
Interesting. Okay, so I just wanted, before I do mine, I just want to double check something real quick on the rankings to see where they are positioned at the moment. Okay, so okay, if I presume that Control V. If I presume that I was to win my match, which I'm gonna have to just say that I'm gonna win my match, because otherwise it's gonna write it in that I'm not going to, and then that will come true. And so let's keep the top 3 the same. But if I predict that the Dark Lord Greninjas lose both their matches, as a result,
then Barry and Landorus come in ahead
and
of
I
them,
think the Amateur Alchemies don't go up that high. I don't think they will. I think the Amateur Alchemies could lose out their matches. Then we've got the Bavarian Landorus coming in.
Yeah.
And if I think the Amateur Alchemies lose both the matches, the Somerville Scraggies win both their matches, the Bavarian Landorus win their match because they beat the Amateur Alchemies. Who else do I think? Well, technically, if I'm considering that if I'm considering the Dark Lords lose both their matches, then the Alchemies get knocked out by the Cardiff Kamalas. If they
don't the Scraggies and the Alchemies play each other as well, so not both of them can't. Both of them can't win, right? They play each other. One of them has to lose.
Yeah, I know, but
to be who you think wins the matchup.
That's why I've said Somerville is up here. So I'm going to do
Somerville are going to win that match.
Yeah, I think Somerville will win both their matches, which is against the Lux Rays and against the Amateur Alchemies.
With the Kamalas,
and if the Dark Lords are losing both the matches, then the Cardiff Kamalas actually take the 6th spot based on this.
Very controversial matrix.
Yeah, I actually think the Southeast Lux Rays have it the hardest to make it into the top 6, even though they are higher than the Kamalas, and that's just because they have to face Tyler in this last week.
Yeah. If they win against Tyler, that's actually putting them in a pretty okay position.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, right.
This is very interesting.
Outlook,
it looks like we all think that Tyler makes it, which is interesting to see. But then everything else, you don't think. We think Alchemies and Dark Lords. You think Landorus and Kamalas.
We got to have as much queer representation in this playoff as much as possible.
And the thing is,
all 3 of us can't be in there.
The other way I can see this going is my match versus Greninjas being different, and that would shift you up into 2nd, Croydon Souls into 3rd, Scraggies I think stay in 4th, I would be 3rd, the Landorus would be 5th, and then the Dark Lords would be 6th. So that's the other way I can see it going.
So, once again, the Dark Lords have to win. Well, they don't have to win. I think they can go 1-1 and still make playoffs. But yeah, I think it's a tough one. Definitely a tough match.
Just one win puts them at that 6th win threshold that you typically need to have the best chance to make playoffs. That 6th win.
So I guess those are our predictions, huh?
Yeah, this is what we're figuring out.
Locking them in.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So keep this, and we'll come back next week and see how close we actually were. So we might
It'll be
see.
fun.
Yeah. So I think that's
Alrighty.
marks the end of this week's podcast. Playoff predictions, and as I say, next week we'll regroup. We'll talk over some of the matches, and we will discuss what our thoughts are for the matchups for the playoffs and how we predict the actual full length of the playoffs will pan out, and see if any of us can fully predict it.
Oh yeah.
As we
March Madness.
as we progress into the playoff matches, and there'll be less matches to talk about, we'll use some of the time to review some of the teams, individual teams, and talk about how their seasons have gone as a whole.
I agree.
Just to fill out that extra bit of content. Might take maybe 4 teams a week as we go through the playoffs.
Yeah.
Probably starting with the eliminated teams next week.
Yeah.
So
That works for me. Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me, Matrix.
no problem.
Yeah,
Always great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll see you guys next week. See you guys in playoffs. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a good one.
I will be commenting. Maybe I'll be commentating some of your matches.
Yeah, you're planning to do some post commentary with Ancient Jedi, aren't you?
Yep.
So
Should be fun. I think I'd be pretty good at commentating since I do a lot of talking in my battles and my videos. I think I'd be a decent commentator.
that's fair. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, cool.
All right, guys. Well, cheers again. See you next week as we enter as we approach the playoff begin.
Hey.
All right. Peace out, guys.
See you next
What's up,
time.
guys?